Hello, Shockers, and welcome to the Student Government's virtual town hall. My name is Raja Khan, and I'm your new student body president. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting the university president Dr. Jay Golden, provost Dr. Rick Muma, vice president of student affairs Dr. Terry Hall, and manager of instructional design and the Access Dr. Caroline Spear. Thank you all for joining SGA again today in hopes of addressing student concerns and issue as we all navigate our roles and responsibilities during the coronavirus pandemic. For those who are tuning in with us, welcome. Please feel free to ask any questions or concerns you may have in the comment box, and we will answer those. SGA also provided students a way to submit questions prior to going live, so we can take time to answer some of those questions as well. With that, we will go ahead and get started. First, there will be an update from Dr. Jay Golding.
Thank you, Jen. Congratulations and welcome aboard. And to all the students out there, I welcome you and your parents. I hope everybody is doing very well. It's been a busy couple of weeks here. We continue to get ready for the opening of the campus, and we are working among a variety of groups to plan for the opening of the campus for in-person or modified in-person classes starting this August. And I can't tell you how much we all look forward to seeing you guys on campus. You probably have heard some news in regards to budgets at universities and what's happening. So I want to just real brief give you a quick update, and I think in a future town hall I'll provide a little more depth. But just to let you know, from enrollment decline, which we currently have a little bit, but that's mostly the returning students, our incoming freshmen is actually up. We're in a pretty good, healthy spot in that regard, especially compared to other universities. We do have a slight deficit of about $6.8 million. I use slight, I take it very seriously, but if you've been reading the papers, you've seen institutions such as Stanford or Johns Hopkins or University of Arizona and others that are $250 million to $500 million shortfall. But that's still significant for us. So I want to let you know that we are being very aggressive and progressive in the way we approach this. We've already done some initial budget cuts on discretionary things like travel, which you wouldn't think that we'd be traveling anyhow. But we're doing all these steps to ensure that the student experience moving forward continues to grow and to be better. So we're going to take some of the discretionary funding and work that and funds that we don't need to use at this time and really concentrate on the things that we need to do to provide the best experience for you. Tuition increases, that's really up in the air right now. We have a number of strategies that we're evaluating. A lot of this is going to be predicated on what happens if the Sedgwick County and the state opens up after May 3rd and what the state budget's going to be looking at. But I do want to let you know that if we do a tuition increase, we're going to try to keep it very minimal. We're looking well under $70 for a full-time student per semester. We'll know more later. We're not going to be required to turn in any of the information for tuition and fees till June 1st. So we have some time to think about it. So we'll come back to you with more information as that comes about. I actually just came back and changed. I was wearing a very formal tuxedo in my regalia, including this wonderful, beautiful hat, which, yes, I look like Henry VIII. I went to school in the UK, but it's a reminder, please register for the virtual commencement ceremony. We're working hard to have the in-person October 10th, but as you can see on the screen, this is the link so that you can go on and go ahead and register for the virtual commencement. I know the provost has more information about this. And with that, I actually will turn it over to the provost who could talk about what we're doing in planning for opening up the campus.
Hello, everyone. Rick Muma here. I'm the provost at Wichita State University. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to be able to answer any of your questions and hear what's on your mind. I wish I was actually able to talk with you in person, but that'll be coming soon. President Golden asked me to give the campus an update on what we're doing in terms of reopening our campus. You may have heard that by the end of May, actually May 26th, we're going to start reopening the campus in phases. And this is in anticipation of the governor's stay-at-home order that will likely be lifted next week. And I believe today she's giving an update on her plans for that. And so that's one of the reasons why we are also wanting to make the announcement and get folks engaged around the process of doing that, because it's going to be a little bit more complicated than it was when we actually moved to online and remote to go back the other way. And so we've established 7 working groups, and that's made up of faculty, staff, and students. Some of you may be members of those groups. The first one is health and safety. That's probably the most pressing one. We want to make sure when we do open back up that we're doing so in a safe manner that people can feel confident in. So we have a group that's working on that, making recommendations, and all these recommendations will start coming in tomorrow. And hopefully at the beginning of next week, we will have a little bit more to offer about how we're going to do that. But in terms of the health and safety, we'll be focusing on things in terms of cleanliness of facilities, wellness checks of faculty, staff, and students, not just in the classroom, but also in housing, dining facilities, and athletic venues. And there will also be some training materials available for all of us so we can learn more to how to be safe on campus. We also have a group looking at classroom and activity space and physical distancing, the whole notion of being separated from one another in a healthy distance in case someone is infected with COVID-19 or the virus that causes COVID-19. So we have a group that's also working on that and making recommendations on how many students or faculty or staff can be in particular areas, not just the classrooms, but other activity spaces across campus. The third group is a group that's focused around faculty curricular design, and this is probably something that you're most interested in, and that's to make recommendations of what classrooms or classroom activities will look like in the fall. And we're hoping that we'll have very robust offerings like we normally do in a face-to-face environment, but we also need to plan for the possibility of that being a little different, especially if there's a reemergence of the virus. We need to be prepared to be able to pivot in any way that we feel that it's appropriate. So that group will also be making recommendations soon. Of course, I know many of you are concerned about student finances or your finances and the impact that this has had on you. So we not only have this group looking at ways that we can support you financially, but also for you to have a better understanding of some of the fees that we're collecting and why we're continuing to collect some, and just to have a better understanding of that, and to also find ways to help you in understanding that information. The next group is around research. We're a research university, so we have very important research projects that are continuing to go on currently through this current shutdown. But we also need to be mindful of what that means when we come back and open the campus up. So our ADP for research, Dr. Colleen Pugh, is leading that particular group. Of course, we have innovation partners on campus, Airbus, Cessna, Textron, and Law Enforcement Training Center, the YMCA. So we need to make sure that we're coordinating with them and make sure we're consistent in our messaging on how they're opening up and making sure that matches how we're opening up. And then finally, a group is working on communication to the campus. That's probably overall the most important issue here, to make sure everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing this in a safe manner. So you'll hear more about this. We're planning to communicate early next week back to the campus, some of our preliminary plans. And again, we're doing a phased-in opening starting on May 26th, which is a Tuesday after Memorial Day. And we feel like about a 3 or 4 week planning phase is probably an adequate amount of time to make sure that everybody is on board and understands what we're doing. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you. Before we get to the questioning part, I just wanted to update all students listening in for the Shocker Support Locker. As you know, SGA manages the Shocker Support Locker on campus. We have expanded our officer offering with the locker. We are now carrying diapers, baby food, formula, baby wipes, etc. Starting in mid-May, the locker will Mo- um, add Monday in addition to Wednesday and Friday as curbside pickup dates for this summer. So if you have any question or specific needs, please let us know and you can reach out to us through our website sga.wichita.edu if I'm correct about that. Well, moving into the questioning part, I know that Provost Rick Rumuma already touched on the health and safety aspect of it, so we can start off with that question, with those questions. So, what can students expect regarding extra cleaning that will be performed to prevent transmission of the coronavirus once things get back to normal, to prevent the transmission of flu and other viruses, and keep our campus healthy?
Yeah, good question. And so that's a part of the health and safety work group that I mentioned earlier. And so they'll be making recommendations about that. But a couple of things. So even before we actually closed the campus, our physical plant staff, our custodial staff, were actually already engaged in doing extra cleaning of the campus and had different protocols, wiping down surfaces and doorknobs and those sorts of things. So that will continue. And there will be some recommendations on how that will be bolstered coming back. Knowing that there's a lot more information available and a lot more resources available, I think we'll find it to be a little bit easier. And, it's always also important for everybody to take a little bit of ownership themselves and be cognizant of your surroundings. And when you sit down, I'll be carrying a little bottle of hand sanitizer myself to make sure I'm constantly sanitizing my hands, but also my work surface. And I think everybody's going to have to do that because we're not going to be able to be there at every moment that you need something clean. So you should be prepared for that, and we can help provide those kind of resources if that's not possible for individual students. But just to get back to this ownership in terms of our own health, we need to make sure that everybody's clear on that we need to do whatever we can to make sure that we're providing a safe surrounding for ourselves, but also others that are close to us. So I want people to understand that we will help, but we want you to make you understand too that you need to help us as we move forward, particularly around cleanliness, but also wearing face coverings and those sorts of things.
Hey, Risha, I think
Yes.
to carry on with what the provost was saying, that we want students to be prepared to be wearing masks or face coverings when they come back to campus. And so if they have not purchased one or made one, to make sure that that's considered one of their school supplies for when they come back to school. We will have some available on campus. Certainly there'll be fancy shockerized ones downstairs in the bookstore if students want to buy them. But one of the school supplies, along with the hand sanitizer that the provost mentioned, students should expect to have at least one mask that they can wear while they're in confined spaces on campus. And social distancing is impossible.
All right, great. So the next question is related to fall classes. So person just wants to confirm that if classes are transitioned back online, will the online fees be online fees exemption stay the same for classes that were not designed to be online?
Yeah, so currently the only classes that are assessed online fee are the ones that are actually intended to be taught online. And there's about, I don't know, 30% of our students take an online course. So anyway, several hundred courses. But those that would possibly have to transition to a different format, those courses will still be assessed the same fees that they currently are, does not include an online fee.
All right. So we have a live question that we just wanted to, add on here. But will fall students have an opportunity to do an on-campus visit orientation before the semester starts?
Good question. So we had to make a decision a few weeks ago because orientation actually starts at the end of May, that all the main content that's normally covered in orientation will be provided virtually. We're purchasing a orientation interface that will allow us to present that information in a kind of a creative and innovative way. And then we get closer to the semester, there will be more activities, some face-to-face activities, of course, will have to be practiced with and designed with face-to-face interactions limited and physical distancing limited in mind. So, but we do plan to have more robust kinds of offerings as the semester gets closer to being started. But the bulk of the content will be delivered through a virtual platform.
All right, going into our next question. What can or should we expect from our professors regarding classes? Like, should we delay enrolling until we know what the classes might look like?
Well, I'm going to answer a little bit of that, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Spear because I think she'll have a really good response in terms of what would be expected from our professors. Well, one of the things I want to just say and discourage you from doing is not enrolling until you know more about what the course is going to be like, because that's going to be evolving over time. And you want to make sure that you have the course that you need that fits into your plan of study so that you can keep on track for your graduation. So highly discourage you from waiting too long to decide whether you're going to enroll. And I'll just say, and Carolyn can talk more about this in a second, is that we have developed all kinds of robust training materials and coaching activities to help faculty improve whatever they're going to do. If they do have to provide it in a format that's different from the traditional face-to-face. And I think, Carolyn, you could explain more about that. But I feel very confident that faculty will be able to do a good job in terms of delivering the content in the fall.
I'm going to go ahead and add to that. Hi, I'm Carolyn Spear. So we are in regular meetings, very regular meetings, trying to ensure that instructors have, to the best of the university's ability, all of the support that they need to deliver the course that they know and believe that is the best way to deliver their material. We put a very high value on instructors making decisions for their courses and to work with the technologies and the trainings and other support mechanisms available to them to make sure that they have everything that they need in order to be successful. That has meant that a number of different organizations on campus that ordinarily provide some different kinds of support are working together in different kinds of ways and in innovative ways to think of ways that we can support our instructors as we go. I just, right before this time, just got out of a meeting with people from the Media Resources Center and Video Services and Campus Media Services, trying to work through how we can coordinate support so that instructors can do some video capture of their lectures so we can get some of that content moved online into Blackboard so that as much of the time that you as students have with your instructors in the classroom, as much of that time as possible can be retained for those super high value, important interactions between instructors and students. Your instructors miss you so much. They talk about it all the time. And they want to be able to have as much interaction with their students as they can. And so in order to make that happen for them and to make that possible, and maintain a continuity of instruction, we are working very hard to provide a number of supports to get some of that content delivery into a digital space so that that face-to-face interaction can be just meaningful for everybody who participates in it. So a lot of people on campus are working for that, to that goal. And we have students as well as instructors and support staff all talking together right now, figuring those things out.
Hey, Regia, I'd just like to jump in and kind of elevate it a little bit. The provost and Dr. Spear talked elegantly about what our faculty are doing in the staff to support those faculty. But your educational experience at Wichita State or at any university is highly dependent upon not just the faculty, but the whole campus environment, all of our staff, all of our partners. And I just want the students and their families to know that everybody on our campus is taking this very seriously. Everybody's truly dedicated to make sure that that student experience, your student experience, starting this fall, is as impactful, as less stressful, and as enjoyable as possible. So it's not just what's going to happen within the confines of that classroom or even remotely like we're doing now, but what other types of support mechanisms, student support, student affairs that Dr. Hall leads, as well as other things, even to the extent of we want to make sure that to the best extent possible, faculty and staff and students can interact, those coffees with your faculty member when you have problem sets, those type of things. How do we establish and set up our university and the campus to really facilitate that? So it's from athletics to student affairs to faculty, we're all in this, and I can guarantee you everybody's truly dedicated to make this experience as best as possible under what are unusual circumstances that we all realize.
All right. So this is another live question. My professor keeps pushing the Proctor U charges onto us, even after we send multiple complaints about this. Can you clarify if students are supposed to pay for this charge for exams?
Yeah, so a couple of things about it. So if the syllabus initially had in there that students were expected to pay for Proctor U charges for their exams, that's still the expectation. However, if a course has been, if that wasn't in there, or a course has switched to a remote or online format, those charges are to be covered by the college's offices. So what I would suggest, if this is an issue for a particular student, is that they email provost@wichita.edu, and we can reach out to that student and college to make sure that that's clarified for the student.
All right, so the next set of questions will be related to student experience. I am a president of student organization on campus. As we are trying to prepare for events in the fall, is there any guideline about the number of people who can be at the events? How does that impact our outdoor events and activities?
So much of that is still being determined. We're waiting to see what guidance we're going to get from the governor and others about the limits of crowd size for events. The chances are we might have to limit events to 50 or fewer, at least initially. Outdoors, we have a little bit more flexibility as long as we have opportunities for social distancing. So we're in the process of working through what does the back to school bash look like, and what does Clash of the Colleges look like. So we're all going through those same things as well as student organizations are. So with a little bit more lead time, we'll be able to advise you about how do you hold your events and how to make sure that you're doing them safely.
I'd like to add to that, if I could, just a little bit. We also have Blackboard available as a way that student organizations can use to organize the folks in their groups and to put out information. That's available through Blackboard organizations. And we are working, my office, Instructional Design and Access, right now is working on providing training so that students will know how to use those tools as well. So we will have that available for fall, as well as support for Blackboard use for clubs and organizations who want to use it by August.
That's great, Carolyn. I would imagine that's going to give students some additional resource, because many of our groups have Facebook groups and other kinds of things, but the kind of bells and whistles that Blackboard would bring would really be a nice place to have files, to have all kinds of things for the group. So that's great. And so I'll work with student involvement to make sure that we're up to speed and we're helping promote that with students as well.
Great.
All right. Is there anything you can share about the residence halls and what living on campus and even eating in the dining hall on campus will look like?
We're expecting to come back with our residence halls at capacity, as we have been for the past year or so. We haven't yet gotten to what dining will look like. Again, we're going to want students to wear masks as much as we can, but I would imagine that we might limit seating in our dining areas for periods of time so that there's opportunity for spreading out. We might encourage students to take things to go as opposed to eating in one of our dining areas. So again, we're working on all those things. Right now, we're working with the folks to get us ready for May 26th. And then we're working on the next phase. What does it look like in August and September when we're getting ready to come back to school?
All right, great. So this question is related to the masks and gloves that students will be recommended to wear on campus. So basically, will we not be allowed on campus unless we wear a face mask?
So just remember that we're going to be following the guidelines, which include social distancing. So in many cases, and there'll be circumstances where you don't need the gloves and masks, but there are going to be many circumstances as well where you may not be 6 feet or further apart. In those cases, you certainly need to be using your mask, in certain areas, gloves as well. Those will be well defined. That's part of the process that's going on now, and will be well communicated to all the students as well as the faculty and staff prior to everybody coming back onto campus.
All right, thank you. What is the impact on facility use fees since students are not using most of the facilities on campus? Will there be a relief or reduction of this fee?
What facility use fees are students charged?
I am not sure.
So I think that sometimes when student groups are going to have an event that is after hours, there might be some additional charges for custodial and some of those kind of things. But for the most part, students are able to reserve space and there's no charge associated with them. So I'm not sure beyond what some of those extra expenses might be, what they'd be charged. If a student group has an event that requires additional service that's beyond normal working hours, unfortunately, we're probably still going to have to charge student groups because those costs are still going to be incurred.
So, Ricky, are you talking about going to the YMCA, some of these other spaces, the Heskett, and those sorts of things that are included in student fees? Is that what you're referring to?
I think with the facility use, I think it could be anything related to facilities such as, like, maybe you're right, the Heskett Center or the YMCA.
Terry, would you want to address the student fees?
So the student fees, we've gotten some questions about if student activities fees in particular were going to be refunded for students, and they're like other mandatory fees that currently go to support the ongoing functioning of offices. And we in student affairs have done our best to take as much as we can online as well. Our health center is still open, but also does telehealth appointments. Our counseling center is doing telecounseling appointments. Our campus rec is doing all kinds of programming virtually, including helping some self-reported 50-mile bike rides and some half marathons and all kinds of things. So while physically we're not able to be together, we're doing all that we can to use a virtual network to be able to still provide programming and services for students.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that all of our facilities will be open. That's the expectation. The variable will be how many people can be convening in a certain room or area of these facilities. Now, things can change, obviously, depending on the health of the community, but that's what the plan is. And in fact, and we'll get, if there's greater clarity about the specific questions been asked, they can email Dr. Hall and she'll provide that further clarity. But people should know that our costs are going to obviously go up too, because we're going to be working very diligently to make sure that we're consistently cleaning and disinfecting all of the locations on campus as well. But everything will be open. Will just be modified, and you might be wearing PPE in certain areas, and we might have smaller number of people having access to certain rooms, but the campus will be open.
And along those same lines, that we're looking at what does intramurals look like in the fall, and what do our sport clubs do, and so depending on the best guidance that we're going to get from the CDC, we might instead this fall have intramurals that aren't contact sports. That we might do table tennis or maybe some badminton and some of those kind of things that students can do without great physical contact with each other until we get the go ahead that we can then do basketball and some of those other kinds of things, soccer, that involves some contact.
All right, thank you to all. Okay, sorry, for the next question. I am using Zoom for my student organization and was able to receive a pro account for our longer meetings beyond the 40-minute time limit. Will we still be able to receive a service that student groups will be able to use during the fall semester?
Yes, I mean, that'll still be available like it is now.
All right. So for the next question, I'm very concerned about COVID-19 and our health and safety. What should students do if we are concerned about returning back to campus and in-person classes?
Would you like for me to answer that? Okay. Well, I think first thing that everybody needs to do is get educated about what COVID-19 is and what it is not. So that means looking at reading the literature, looking at information that we've got posted on our website, make sure that everybody understands what that's about. And also understand that even though this is very serious in a public health context, we know a lot more about this virus than we did a couple of months ago. And we know a lot more how to protect ourselves. And so understanding how we're going to have to get to a point where we need to coexist with the virus, and engaging in health and safety kinds of things, just simple things, washing your hands. If you can't social distance, make sure you have a face covering. If you're in a situation where you need to wear gloves, make sure you have gloves available. Make sure you have hand sanitizers. If we're all doing that collectively as an institution, we can get through this. We can figure out ways to do these kinds of things. You've heard already today some ideas of what we're going to do in terms of making sure that we have social distancing and opportunities that we can be distant from one another. And all of that is important for everybody to have a good working knowledge about it and not be paralyzed by the unknown. I get asked a question all the time, should I cancel this, that, and the other thing? And my answer is no. Figure out a way that you can do that safely. That may be making the event smaller or have multiple smaller chunks of opportunities for students to engage in different kinds of activities, or faculty or staff, whoever it is. figuring out how to make this work, because we have to do this. We have to get back to a situation where we can be together, but in a safe way.
All right, thank you for that. So this question is our last one, and it is a life question. So will the move-in day for our first-year students be stretched out over multiple days to prevent the amount of students that will be moving in at one time?
We haven't quite gotten there yet. It might be that we set appointments for students to come so we can limit the number of students that are here at any one time. But again, we're focusing on to getting ready for May 26th, and then over the next several weeks we'll start having our plan ready for August and move in, because of course we want students and their families to feel safe when they're moving in. So it might be we have fewer volunteers to help. It might be we haven't worked through what that scenario looks like. And I assure you that we will come up with a great plan, and we'll communicate it with you, and we'll work to make sure that everyone is safe in the process.
All right. Well, that concludes the questions. Are there any other updates that you all might want to talk about? Maybe if you wanted to talk about commencement a little more?
Yeah,
Or,
actually, that is one thing, and President Golden mentioned it earlier. We need for you to go to wichita.edu/commencement, those that are eligible to graduate this May, and you need to opt into the virtual commencement. Not everybody's going to be included in that, because it's going to ask for some personal information and your permission to be a participant in this virtual event. And this is the most important thing you need to remember. For those of you that are eligible to graduate, tomorrow is the deadline for this. So go to wichita.edu/commencement. And if you're interested in being a part of the virtual commencement, opt in. Remember what happens. You're going to see when you go to that website, Dr. Golden's address, you'll see remarks from me, all of the deans. You'll be able to click on your college, see your name. You can actually upload pictures of yourself with your family celebrating, and then there'll be a banner created that has your name on it and your degree and any honors that you might have. And it's going to be read out just like you would see at the real commencement. So I think it's going to be a really neat opportunity for folks to engage in. So again, wichita.edu/commencement. Do that today, because the deadline is tomorrow.
all right. So before the closing statement, I would like to give everyone an update about the student fees for next year. As some of you might know that this week I issued one of my first executive orders. This order directed the treasurer to assemble a small group of cabinet members and senators to review 1.5% increase to the student activity fees that was approved by the 62nd session. Today, the group met and voted to recommend to the Senate that the student service fee come in flat, removing the 1.5% increase. COVID-19 has created a financial impact on our students, and we hope that this will pass the Senate next week. Now, with that being said, this basically concludes this town hall. First, I would like to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions and tuned in today's virtual town hall. As the rest of this semester continues on, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of these individuals, departments, or myself if you have any other questions or concerns. I would also like to thank all of our panelists who joined in today. We really appreciate the fact you took the time to help answer student questions. And thank you for your dedication to our wonderful university. Again, thank you for all tuning in, and I hope you all stay happy, safe, and healthy. And remember, it's always a great day to be a shocker. Our
Yes, it
next
is.
SGA Town Hall will be on May 14th at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.